guys today? I am fine. It's a chilly morning in the Pacific Northwest. Last night we had our family night, and our kids, all 5 kids, still show up on Monday nights for family night. They all come over and we sit and watch Survivor, and we have a big dinner together. And it's very special that all my children are grown-ups, and they still come over every week to humor their parents. No, we're a very close family, and I do believe that growing up on a boat is part of the reason why we are as close as we are. Anyway, I asked them last night, what story should I tell tomorrow? And Jimmy and Emily, my oldest son is Jimmy, and then Emily Ann, both of them said, hey, how about telling the story of the very first time we went offshore? They had been on the boat at this point for quite a while in the Bahamas and had cruised in the Exumas and whatnot. And I've got little stories to tell about both of them cruising with me in the Bahamas. And at this time, this was in 2004, Emily Ann was 7 years old and Jimmy was 11 years old. And our boat was hit by first Hurricane Francis while it was sitting in Grand Bahama at Lucaya Marina Village. And then it was hit almost immediately after Francis by Hurricane Jean. We were in Montana at the time, watching all of this on the news and horrified that our boat is probably gone, because Francis hit Grand Bahama direct, and then Jean missed it, and we were like, whew, that was close. And then Jean went north of Grand Bahama, turned around, and came straight back down and nailed it from the other side. And both storms were very devastating to Grand Bahama, and we figured our boat was gone. I started calling and asking the marina, and for a long time, a couple of weeks at least, we couldn't even get through to anybody, of course. All the power lines were down and the phone was down and everything. But when I did finally get the marina on the line, they said, what boat, man? And I said, Wandering Dolphin. And they go, oh, yeah, man, your boat's fine. Your boat's fine. The boat next to you sank, but your boat's fine. No problems. I said, does it have any damage? And they said, no, man, no damage. And I was like amazed. How is that possible, right? So I flew down there within a couple of weeks to do an assessment myself. And compared to the boats around us, our boat did look like it had no damage, but it actually had broken loose at one point during one of the hurricanes and driven its bow up onto the concrete dock, and it had ridden up and down on the dock long enough to take an actual bite out of the concrete. It was a perfectly smooth bite, and all it did to Wandering Dolphin was rub all the paint off and dent the aluminum in a couple spots where it first hit the corner of the concrete. It didn't go through or anything. It just was little dents, and then it wore off the paint. But it sure wore that concrete down good. So that was my first inkling that, hey, having an aluminum boat has its advantages. So then the plan was to take our boat and sail it to, at that time, our plan was to sail it to South Carolina, to Charleston, where we were going to haul it out and get all the work done on it. And by the way, the insurance company did finally pay for it. It was fully insured, and then we bought it back. They totaled it. It had enough damage to total the boat. There were lots of other little things that were wrong with it as well, and it all added up, of course, to enough to total the boat. And then we bought it back from the insurance company for a small percentage of the payoff of the boat. And that allowed us to pay off the small loan that we had against it and still have enough money to fix the boat up and do all the repairs ourselves. So anyway, we had to get our boat from Grand Bahama with the damage that it had, which I fixed everything to make it seaworthy, and we had to get it to Charleston. So at this point, at least I knew enough to check the weather before I went out into the Gulf Stream. And we were actually paying to use Herb at that time, who is a well-known weather guru for the Caribbean. And then also every morning I was listening to Chris Parker on the radio. And so I had a good idea what was going on, and we knew you don't go out into the Gulf Stream in a north wind of any kind, or even a northerly component to the wind. And there were more people than us waiting for a perfect weather window to get back to the U.S. with mostly damaged boats. And we got a notice from Herb saying, if you leave tomorrow afternoon, the wind is still blowing from the north, but it will clock around in the afternoon, and it's going to die down through the evening, and you can motor across the Gulf Stream. All the wind-generated waves will be dying down at that point, and you should have a good crossing and get enough of a boost to get up to Charleston relatively easily. So we were expecting, even though it was blowing 15 to 20 when we left, we were expecting it to die down and become a nice passage. So as we were getting ready to go, the nice lady on the boat next to us who loved our kids brought over a chocolate cake. And she said, "Those kids are going to need some chocolate cake on this trip. You just have to have chocolate cake for an offshore passage." And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, that's great. And I gave it to Scott, who I haven't mentioned. Scott was one of the boys at our school that had also sailed with me in the Bahamas several times. So he knew how to sail and had a good time on the boat. He enjoyed it. And he was my crew. He was the one I was actually counting on to help me crew overnight and do watch schedules and whatnot to get to Charleston. And so I said, "Hey, Scott, take this cake down and stow it down below." And he thought stow it meant put it on the table in the salon area. And so he just set that great big chocolate cake on the table in the middle of the salon. And again, as I said in that one video, if anything happens on a trip and I'm the captain of the boat, it's my fault. I didn't tell Scott what stow it means. Scott had not been offshore yet. He'd only sailed in the protected waters of the Exumas and whatnot, so he had no idea what offshore was like. And so he just thought, I'll just take it down and put it on the table. And you can see from foreshadowing, see how I did that? Where this is going. Anyway, we left the dock, waved at our new friends in Grand Bahama, and headed out with the wind still blowing from the north at 15 to 20 knots. And if you know the area at all, I don't know, I'll let everybody else know. It's only about 80 miles, actually, from Grand Bahama to West Palm Beach. And so it's not very far. Basically, it's a half a day sail on a fast boat. Generally, you do it in a day. And we were going to Charleston, so I was expecting to do that in 2 days, 3 at the most, depending on what happened. But you get a big boost from the Gulf Stream, and I did know that at that time. So even though I was very inexperienced at this point still, I did know that. So we hoisted all the sails. I had a full jenny out. I had my staysail flying and a full main. And I was expecting the wind to die. So I was trying to make some tracks, get out near the Gulf Stream by the time the wind died, so that I could, haul on up to Charleston, maybe make it in 2 days or so. I don't know. I did have probably more sail flying than I would now in that situation. But pretty soon, it was getting pretty rough. Before we even got to the Gulf Stream, the waves, wind-generated waves, were pretty large. Nothing like we would see later, but they were still rolling pretty good. And remember, all of this is remembering back to 2004, and this is when I was a pretty new sailor, really. I was new to offshore. This was only my second offshore passage at this point. And so my memory of these things, it may be bigger in my head, in my memory, than what it actually was. You all know how that goes. As a matter of fact, if you took myself from now, certainly my kids from now, and dump us into that situation, we actually would still be scared. No, actually at points, maybe. But anyway, definitely time plays tricks with your memories. But this is how I remember it. So We reefed the sail. I remember putting in double reef actually in the mainsail, and I rolled in the jib a little bit, not a lot, and I think I dropped the staysail, which I would not have done now. I would have left the staysail up, rolled the jib in even more, and had a double reefed main at this point. So it was close, but I did a few things differently. And the wind at 3 o'clock. So in my inexperience, again, at this point, when weather people, gurus, are telling me something's going to happen with the weather, I believe them. No, I mean I believe them. Like, they really knew what was going to happen. If they'd have told me at 2:45 the wind's going to clock 180 degrees, I would have been at 2:30, I'd have been looking at my clock and watching the wind and ready for it in 15 minutes to clock around. And now I know that's just their best guess. I mean, I should have known that then. That's like a no-brainer. But you don't really know something until you experience something, in my opinion. And yeah, the wind didn't die down. It picked up a little bit, still blowing from the north. And it had shifted a little bit, but it still was definitely northeast at this point. And when we got to the edge of the Gulf Stream, you could actually see the stream. It was that much of a demarcation line in the size of the waves. The waves in the Gulf Stream were giant. I've sailed a lot now, as I've said over and over again. I don't think, and again, memory is what it is, but I don't think I've ever been in such huge waves since. Now, and I've been offshore in storm force winds, 60 knots plus, both on Sweetest Thing and on another delivery of changing tags, which was an island packet. And Sweetest Thing was a 48-foot Fontaine Pajot catamaran. And I do not remember the waves in that wind being nearly as large as the waves in the Gulf Stream on this particular passage. And I must not have been showing a lot of fear because my kids were not afraid at this point. They had never really been offshore, so I think they thought that this is just how the ocean is when you're offshore, and Dad's not worried about it, so it's okay. And so Jimmy he's 11 years old at that time, and he was spelling me at the wheel because I didn't trust the autopilot. Now I know that the autopilot would have done just fine. I could have left the autopilot on, actually, and it would have steered us over that stuff just fine. We were taking the waves at an angle, riding up them, and it really was like going up a roller coaster. You'd ride up and then whoosh, down the other side. And at this point, I did not have a drogue, so I wasn't towing a drogue. We were just making tracks. And at least they were not breaking waves. They were just giant swells. No breaking waves. Thank the Lord. But Emily Ann, she came up and she just kind of huddled down in the cockpit in a little circle with a blanket over her. And she'd just poke her head out every once in a while and say, "Are you okay, Dad?" And I'd say, "Yep, I'm fine." And I was scared, but I didn't let them know. And I kept yelling down for Scott to come up and help me, and I wasn't getting any response. And Jimmy looked down and he said, "Oh, Dad, Scott's not coming up." And I went, "Here, take the wheel." And so Jimmy came around and he took the wheel. And I poked my head down below, and the chocolate cake had flown off of the table and landed on the floor. And Scott was laying on the cabin sole, and we'd go down a wave, and the chocolate cake would slide down the cabin sole, zzz, whoop, and hit him in the face. And he had chocolate cake all over his face, and he didn't even move. And then the next wave, we'd go up, and the chocolate cake would slide back down towards the companionway, and then do it again. Zzz. And I yelled down, Scott, I really need your help. This is a tough trip, and I think I need your help. We could even die." And he goes, yeah, that's okay. Really, it's all right. I think I'd rather die. I'm not making that up. And I said, okay, well, we might, so hold on to your cookies. And he just laid there covered in chocolate cake all the way to Florida. Anyway, night came. Remember, we left in the afternoon, so night came on, and again, I was hand steering. And at this point, I had changed course for Fort Pierce, Florida. I had decided that I just wanted out of everything. I wanted out of it. I wanted out of the boat. I wanted off of the ocean, and I wanted to get to land and count my lucky stars that we were even alive. And when morning came, we were coming right into Fort Pierce. And the inlet in Fort Pierce, I've done it many times since on deliveries and whatnot. And now I know that, if the wind's against the tide at Fort Pierce Inlet, it also is very rough. And it was a wind against the tide as I'm coming in. And we rode in some great big rollers as we came into the inlet. We docked at the marina there. And I'll tell you, the really cool thing was at that point, I was done sailing. I was moderately traumatized by that night sailing across the Gulf Stream. And my kids weren't. They were fine. They thought it was fun. And they just loved the laughing about the chocolate cake. And Scott made a full recovery. And I called my wife and I said, hey, honey, we made it. And if you want to sell the boat, if you want out of this whole idea of sailing around the world, say the word. Right now, I'll sell the boat and I'll never mention it again. I'll never mention sailing again. Just say the word. And she said, oh, hell no, we're not doing that. We're too far into this now. We're fixing that boat and we're moving aboard and we're sailing it around the world. So the lesson there is all of this sailing, it wasn't just me. I would have got us out of it after this. It was definitely, my wife was part of that. My kids were part of it. No one was willing to quit but me at that point. So there you go. I enjoyed this little chance again to chat with you and tell you a story. And my mind's going about stories to tell you guys, so I hope you like it. Please comment. I like your comments. They really help me a lot. And I've been also thinking about, I know, a third video a week. Just a little quick one where I just answer maybe one question that was asked in the comments from prior weeks and answer it directly to you. More of a technical thing, and it can be about seamanship or sailing or the boat choices, anything like that. So if you are interested in that and you have a question that you'd like me to put into a quick video answer question type thing, I think I would limit that video to maybe a short, like a 5-minute, no longer than 10-minute video. But if you're interested in me doing that, let me know in the comments and I will start making that happen. Right now it's winter time, it's coming on, getting cold. Right now the heater's going in MIG and it's warm in here, but I'm about ready to start sewing cushions now. I actually was going to pull out the sewing machine today and maybe start on that today. So I do have a little extra time is what I'm saying to edit some other videos. So I've done the first video on the bowsprit, and the second video on the bowsprit will be coming out this Friday, and the third one will be coming out the next Friday. I know that's a lot of real estate to put into, one subject, just the bowsprit, but each video gets a little better, I think, because it's a finished product at the end, and I wanted to make sure I put it all in there so that other people who are deciding to redo their North Sea 27 bowsprit have something to kind of watch and follow. Ooh, that's a little scary to think you might follow me and do what I did, but I think I did a good job. So video 2 about the bowsprit this Friday. Thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting. Thanks for liking and subscribing. And tell your friends. See you on Friday. Bye. Face black. Together.